pretty excited. This could be the solution to all of our black tank woes. Commando black tank cleaner. So as we can see, big thing, clean sensors. This is our problem. Environmentally friendly. This is the third set of chemicals that we've tried to fix this problem. So fingers crossed. Now apparently my fingers crossed is not very crossed. Fingers crossed. So the issue we have is that our sensors aren't reading in the black tank, which is obviously problematic because we don't know how full it is. So we've tried two different kinds of chemicals, just the normal black tank cleaning chemical, then the next level up. This is the next level up again. Hopefully it fixes the problem. Hopefully it frees up the sensor float tube and we don't have to get in there and get our hands dirty. The next stage, if this doesn't work, is to go through and try and check all of the electronic sort of connections. Hopefully it's maybe one of those things, but this is the process, always problem solving. I heard a wonderful quote the other day that owning a boat is like just traveling to amazing places to work on your boat. Pretty much. So this is what we normally use just to keep the tank smelling fresh. Now obviously with a seawater flushing system you end up with a bit of a stinky tank normally. This is quite a different consistency I guess to the normal more liquid one. So and it goes. Right, so that's our first bucket in. That's about 10 litres of the 200 that we're going to put in. One thing I've noticed straight away, and this is a trick that I'm sure we'll use next time when we come into port, flushing the fresh water. Everyone says that's the best way to leave your toilet. Normally when we come on board and straight away use the toilet, the stinky sulphury smell from rotten seawater which has been sitting in the pipes even for a couple of days is really quite unpleasant. But straight away, just using fresh water for these first couple of flushes, no stinky sulphury smell. So that's really super interesting. But also, if we had a water maker and we had our toilets and our showers rigged up to a water maker, we wouldn't have to worry so much about the seawater flush. And you can really, when you live with saltwater toilets, you can really start to see the attraction of a freshwater system, but you would need to have a water maker. So lofty goals.
Right, so let's go. Time to hit the high seas, or the calm seas of the Marlborough Sounds, as the case may be. Yep. Now we had some high hopes that we'd got the whole thing solved as we headed out towards the Sound. Cue the high hopes music. So we're heading back to port. We've only just left this afternoon. Had a few mechanical issues that we had to sort out, but we needed to come out and empty our tank, our black tank, because we've been trying to get the sensor in the black tank to unstick itself, I guess, so that we would have the capacity to actually know how full the tank is. And as we've come out to a region where we can release the black tank, which is quite far out for us, you know, it's a good hour's drive to get out of there and clear of all of the narrowness of the Sounds and people's houses and mussel farms. The tank wouldn't empty, the pump wouldn't work. So we've tried a variety of different things whilst underway to get the tank to empty. Nothing has been successful. So as the sun sets, instead of having a lovely sunset out in the Sounds on anchor, we're heading back to the marina. Thankfully the tide is in our favour, and so we're going with the tide, and by the time we get there it's going to be just on high tide. So at least fuel consumption is working to our advantage. However, back to the marina. And a full black tank, so we can't even use the toilet on the boat. And that was what's forced us to turn around, because it's all well and good being out there when you've got 3 boys that can wee over the side. Oh, we could have used the shui. Oh,
We're not
damn.
using a shui. We're not sharing one shui. No.
That could have forced the shui conversation to happen.
There's only one. We're not sharing one.
So this is part of how it all goes. So this
But we
is,
have to say the black tank is full of just water and cleaning product.
Yeah.
It's
So-
not full of anything else. It's a pretty clean black
it's a
tank.
clean black tank.
But we have to get it empty, otherwise we can't use it.
Yeah, it's a very clean black tank because it's just full of the chemicals designed to clean it.
And fresh water.
And fresh water. So it's super frustrating, but this is the nature of this game, I guess. Sometimes it doesn't go your way.
That wasn't the only problem we had today though.
No, it wasn't.
What was the other problem, David?
So the other problem was I went down to do pre-engine checks before firing up the engines, and I looked, there was some water in the bottom of the engine tray for the generator, and normally there isn't. So I fossicked around deep into the generator engine, or the genset engine, which is quite a large engine, and I discovered in the sea jacket water cooling system there was a lot of powder, I guess, around where the anode goes in, which is not normal. So imagine if you take the back off a kid's battery toy that you've left for a couple of years, and the batteries have all corroded and there's all gunky powdery stuff around the batteries. That was kind of that same sort of powder. So I figured, without looking at the instruction manual, that was where the anode was. The anode was potentially all eaten up and we were having some issues around that. So I thought I'd take the anode out and have a look and see what happened. As soon as I started to undo it, the whole thing kind of sheared off, which created a problem in itself. I eventually managed to get it out, but yeah, I couldn't put the cap without the anode back in without it leaking everywhere. So I had to go on a mission around the pier to find someone who could give me some advice. Thankfully, old mate Ken was on hand. Wealth of knowledge, that man. He came over and boat yogaed his way into the engine room. So two of us big boys in the engine room would have been a funny video, but unfortunately we didn't get it. And so he managed to get the cap back on the anode plug so that we could at least go out for a couple of days and have a functional generator. Whilst not being protected by an anode, it would have been fine for a couple of days. But alas, we're heading back anyway.
So we'll fix it properly. It might
So
be
we'll
just
fix it properly.
weekend of jobs, I think, in the marina.
Yeah. And sunset.
So hopefully we've still got a wee way to go. Hopefully we get back before it's dark.
Yeah. Docking in the dark. I've
Yeah.
never done that. So fingers crossed. I guess we're probably 20 minutes away from the marina. Do we have 20 minutes of light left?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Hope
What a day.
tie this on.
So, the next day dawns, and as it turns out, made a bit of a dog's breakfast of everything yesterday. Had another chat to Ken, wealth of knowledge, that man, and I think I've worked out what's happened. Essentially down in the engine room where the black tanks are controlled, there's a holding tank and an overboard switch. Now, in my wisdom, I thought that overboard meant that flushing the toilet would just sort of bypass the whole thing. Everything gets macerated at the toilet anyway, and it would just flow out overboard, job done, doesn't get held, you know, long passage at sea, that sort of thing. You're just dumping it as you go. So, with the tank being full, because that's what the instructions on the chemical packet said, fill the tank and let it do its magic so that it's at least covering the sensors. Again, I don't know how the sensors are set up in this tank. All I've got to work with is some YouTube footage. And gosh, this is real life with noisy birds. And so the tank was full. Didn't know how much was in the tank to begin with because our sensor gauge isn't working, so it's all just guesstimates. Presuming that we're working with a 200 litre Blackwater tank, again just guesstimates, and so I put 180 litres of water in. As it turns out, that was potentially too much, and then when we're underway trying to get it all to work, and it wasn't, so I kept flushing the toilets with seawater, just hoping that it would sort of magically fix itself and stuff would start going overboard. And at one point we had a little burst of water that came out, which was interesting, but yeah, I think what's ended up happening is potentially there is a seal where one of the pipes goes into the tank that has got a leak in it, or has got a tear in the seal, which is letting air in. Now, as we've filled the tank up, what's ended up happening is that seal is completely failed, or the whole thing is popped off, and so potentially we've got a hose that's compromised or popped off or split or something, and there's air in the system, so the pump isn't working because it needs a vacuum, obviously. And what was happening as we were coming back, and this is the reason why we turned around yesterday, was as I was flushing the water, the engine room bilge alarm was going off, because all that water was, instead of going into the holding tank, was going into the bilge, and the bilge was then working. So yeah, these things you learn. So into the tool cupboard we go this morning. Well, I'm on the mission, on the hunt. I have seen what I'm presuming to be a little fitting for the waste pipe that comes out the top of the deck, along with the fuel, where the fuel goes in and the water goes in. So there is a waste outlet, and yesterday when I was in there, I was kind of fumbling around trying to work out how the whole system worked. So I need to find a coupling. So I went down early morning on the dog walk and looked at the whole sewage pump extraction thing, and it says we need to have a special fitting. Pretty sure I've seen that fitting on the boat. I didn't know what it was for. Hopefully it's in here somewhere. So on a mission, and then off to the fuel dock and the black tank extraction point for a mission. Unfortunately, the tide is really working against us. It was high tide at about 5 a.m. in the morning, or earlier. Well, it's low tide at about 11, and it's quite shallow in here, so we've got limited room to operate in terms of getting out to the fuel dock and back into our berth. It's a 0.7
low tide today, so that's not so bad. But on some days when it's been like a 0.2 low tide, we're sitting on the bottom. So yeah, we don't want to be doing this too close to 11 a.m. this morning. So.
And the reason we're going to go over and extract all the water from our tank is because we've got to take it all apart.
Yes, so this is today's mission, hence tools.
Okay, let's go then.
So we got down to the fuel dock, which has also got a sewage system. So we've got a pump, which is plan D, E. So we're going to pump out our black tank so that at least we're not dealing with a whole lot of chemicals and water and weight in the tank, so that when it's time for me to take the whole thing apart, it's going to be a bit easier and I'm not going to have a whole lot of stuff bubbling everywhere, because I think that's part of the problem. So we've never done this before, fingers crossed. So we've got a waste outlet on the deck, which is fantastic, specifically for this reason, I'm guessing, because there must be places in the world where, man, it's been a long time since this has been in there. There must be places in the world where you can't flush your black tank into the water. So here goes. I'm guessing that just sits in like that.
I feel like I should stand back just in case.
Yay. So at least if we can get the pressure out of the tank so that the tank is empty, I can start disconnecting hoses, like, because I think what was happening yesterday when we were out trying to flush the tank, and then we switched it to the straight overboard when we were in deep enough water, and it wasn't going overboard, it was just bubbling out of the tank into the bilge. So I suspect that one of the hoses connected to the tank is, like, a seal has failed. So we will begin the process of elimination.
Still coming. So it looks like we've got a pretty clean tank looking at the colour of that water. It's just coming out kind of a bluey colour, which I'm guessing is the chemical. It's pretty clear, which is going to make the next job better, isn't it, David?
Well, yeah, I've googled, YouTubed and chatted to old mate Ken about cleaning the sensor, and he said it's not a very pleasant job. So time will tell.
Aren't you pleased that we've put this clean stuff through it first?
Right, so I'm in the engine room, and we're going to try and tackle this whole black tank situation. Now, part of the problem we have is this. So there's the black tank there underneath our big generator. So I'm guessing that the sensor, you can see the wires going back there, are right back there. So that's going to be very, very difficult to get to. This pump, I'm guessing, is part of the problem as to why we can't pump out. So it's got a fuse in it. Fingers crossed it's only the fuse, which I can replace, and then we've got a working pump again, but that doesn't help the fact that the sensor isn't working. So before I go too far, I guess I need to check to make sure that there's power getting to the sensor and that these wires are all still functional. So here we go, time to start taking things apart. It would be more than ideal if this black tank was a bit more accessible. Right, so as I take this apart, it might appear that I don't know what I'm doing, and that is exactly correct. I had very little information to go on, only a couple of exploded views of the pump, but no real instruction as to how the whole thing worked. I searched all sorts of different websites and really came up with nothing to help me. However, as I sort of made my way through the whole process, watched a bunch of YouTube videos, I got to wrap my head around how the whole thing actually worked. So I had a much better comprehension of what I was dealing with. This kind of pump is actually a diaphragmatic pump. It uses a diaphragm in it, so it needs to breathe. So my whole assumption that there was air in the tank which was causing the problem was entirely incorrect. We actually had no air in the tank, and we needed air in the tank in order for the diaphragm to do its work and to start pumping. So by us removing all of the liquid out of the black tank, we probably fixed most of the problem ourselves by doing that, and all of this was just an exercise in futility. Here we are. I've managed to take apart the motor, which wasn't easy. Ran out of GoPro batteries. Didn't realise it was just filming nothing. So I've taken this apart, twisted it a little bit just to make sure that it rotated, and there wasn't a lot of information online anywhere that would help me. So put it back together. There was a really funky little magnetic washer in there, which in the end had to use little wooden sticks in order to get the magnets aside so that I could put it all back together. It's quite tricky. It was so tricky that I don't want to refilm that ever, because that took me about an hour. Right, so we're just going to give it another run, make sure it's all working. There we go. So you can hear it going. Right, so we've moved on to the next job, which is the generator. So you can see down here, you can see right in there, that's the anode point that was all corroded, and it was just, this whole area in here was just full of powder from the anode just sacrificing itself and doing its job. So I need to pull it out so that this screw pocket can be reseated because it's cracked, and a new anode can be put in. Hopefully we can keep this and not have to replace it, but who knows. Alex, you ready? This is super messy work. So I'm just draining out the coolant in little bits. So I've managed to get most of the coolant out.
into our nice little yuck bucket. But it's quite stinky in here, so I had the engine blower on, but the engine blower makes a huge noise because it's basically sucking clean fresh air from the outside and pumping it through the engine room and returning it to the other side, so it creates a cross breeze, which I'm going to have to go back to because it's so stinky. But I've just noticed, you can see down there, that's some of the crusty bits that I swept off of the anode. So this whole area was absolutely covered in it. So I'm guessing it's some sort of oxidized zinc.
It looks like dried up sea salt.
Yeah. There's still heaps of liquid in here. And the next phase is to pull this whole unit out. So I'm trying to clean as I go. So I don't want too much excess liquid everywhere. This is a messy job, but at least it's just chemicals and not black tank. I think the black tank is, unless we can pull this up, we can't actually get to the sensor, so it might be easier just to put a new sensor in, one that we can actually get access to. This is, and can absolutely guarantee, yeah, so it's between 9 and 10 mils, which is going to be imperial, which I don't have. Right, good to know. So, all of the problems that the magnetic tip on this caused with the Japsco waste pump, it just actually rescued me because that had disappeared underneath. So this time I'm going to try and hold that. Perfect work for little tiny fingers. There's my engine room buddy. Two down, two to go. Oh, alright, brackets are off. I'm guessing the next thing that's going to happen when I move this, there's going to be a heap of liquid that's going to come out everywhere. So and ta-da! One very messy heat exchanger pipe. So this is going to go to a radiator repair shop where we'll get it reconditioned. What a massive job. Thankfully, this really was a job for back in port. This wasn't a job to be tackling out at sea, because man, what a mess. What a smell. So I'm guessing that's a mixture of coolant and seawater by the colour and smell of everything. So we'll do a little bit of cleanup and then we'll call that a day. So it's funny, this really wasn't an anticipated job. This was an accidental discovery. Just doing the pre-trip check, where I just go through and have a look at everything and make sure everything looks right. And this didn't look right. And it was only because I noticed a little bit of water in the tray, and that was quite by happenstance. I don't think that this problem probably would have got picked up due to give this engine a big overhaul and change the oil and change all the fluids, so I would have seen it then. But what it's done, because we're coming up to a year since I did it last, so what it's done is just sped up the process, and I'll get all of this done, and as I'm going through, I think I'll give it a real good going over and possibly refurbish a couple of other bits and pieces as I find them. So I'll drain out all the oil, give it an oil change the filters, do all of that, carry on.
Right, so if you got to this point in the video, congratulations. You can feel my pain in terms of how long this whole process has taken. And the winner on the day, this thing. Well, two of these things. These were the little cocktail devices that actually enabled me to put that Jabsco waste pump back together again. So we didn't get any resolution. This is part 1. Part 2 to follow. I have taken the heat exchange or the water exchanger to a radiator repair shop to get cleaned out, sandblasted and reconditioned. The black tank, on the other hand, at least we can empty it now, but we're still no closer to having any kind of resolution in terms of knowing how full it is. So the next stage, unfortunately, is going to be putting in a new gauge so that we can at least have some sort of accurate knowledge as to how full the tank is. We've worked out how long we can last as a family, but whenever we have other people on board, that all changes dramatically because you just can't control how they use the toilet. And it's a bit creepy to be measuring people's flushes. Part 2 to follow. Like and subscribe for more, please. We're enjoying making content, and we would certainly enjoy having your subscription so that we can continue to make more. Cheers. See you next time.